the awakening of the beast, the golden age of ignorance. The Galactic Federation had existed for over 12,000 years. Within its vast network of civilized worlds, 847 different species lived in relative harmony. They traded goods, shared technology, and resolved disputes through diplomatic channels. War was something ancient, a relic of primitive times that most species had abandoned millennia ago. The galaxy had become comfortable, predictable, and safe. Humanity entered this peaceful stage in the year 2289. Earth's first contact with alien life came when a Federation survey ship discovered human radio signals. The aliens were curious about this new species that had somehow survived on a Class 9 death world. Most life-bearing planets were gentle places with mild weather and few predators. Earth was different. It had hurricanes, earthquakes, venomous creatures, and diseases that would terrify most galactic citizens. Yet humans had not just survived but thrived. The Federation welcomed humanity with cautious optimism. Humans were granted junior membership status, which meant they could trade and observe but had limited voting rights. They would need at least 200 years of peaceful development before qualifying for full membership. Ambassador David Kim accepted these terms with grace. He understood that humanity was the newcomer at a very old table. They needed to prove themselves worthy of respect. For 3 years, everything proceeded smoothly. Human merchants established trade routes. Human students attended galactic universities. Human tourists visited alien worlds with wonder in their eyes. The galaxy began to see humans as harmless, even endearing in their enthusiasm. They were like children discovering a larger world, and the older species watched them with benevolent patience. The day everything changed, New Hope was humanity's most distant colony, located on the edge of explored space. 700,000 people called it home. They were farmers, miners, engineers, and families seeking a fresh start among the stars. The colony was small by galactic standards, but precious to humanity. It represented their future, their potential, their dreams of spreading beyond Earth. The Zalthari Collective had different plans. The Zalthari were an old species, proud and territorial. They had controlled their region of space for 6,000 years. Their empire spanned 42 star systems, and they viewed themselves as superior to most other species. The Zalthari had scales like diamonds, stood 9 feet tall, and possessed natural armor that could deflect most conventional weapons. They were warriors by culture and conquerors by tradition. When the Zalthari noticed human ships near what they considered their territory, they felt insulted. These newcomers, these soft creatures from a death world, dared to establish a colony so close to Zalthari space. It was unacceptable. War Master Thrakos, the supreme military commander of the collective, decided to teach humanity a lesson about respecting their betters. The attack came without warning on a quiet Tuesday morning. 50 Zalthari warships appeared in orbit above New Hope. They did not send a message. They did not issue demands. They simply opened fire. Plasma cannons burned through the colony's defensive shields in minutes. The shelters designed to protect against meteor strikes were useless against military-grade weapons. For 6 hours, the Zalthari bombarded the colony from orbit. When the attack finally ended, New Hope was gone. 700,000 people were dead. The colony that had taken 10 years to build was reduced to smoking craters and melted metal. The Zalthari fleet departed without claiming the territory or taking resources. This was not conquest. This was a message. This was extermination meant to put humanity in its place. The call for justice. The news reached Earth 36 hours later. Ambassador David Kim stood before the Galactic Federation Council with tears streaming down his face. Around him sat representatives from hundreds of species, comfortable in their ornate seats, safe in their ancient chambers. Kim's voice shook as he described the massacre. He showed them footage recovered from satellites, images of families running for shelters that could not save them, recordings of final messages sent by people who knew they were about to die. The council chamber was silent when the presentation ended. Kim looked around at the alien faces, searching for sympathy, for outrage, for justice. What he found instead was uncomfortable indifference. Council Prime Zeleth, a being that resembled a floating crystal with a voice like wind chimes, spoke first. The translation came through clear and emotionless. Ambassador Kim, the Federation sympathizes with your loss. However, this appears to be a territorial dispute between your species and the Zalthari Collective. Both parties involved are either junior members or protectorate states. Federation law prevents us from intervening in conflicts between non-full members. Kim felt his blood turn to ice. Territorial dispute? They murdered 700,000 civilians without provocation. They destroyed an entire colony. How is this not an act of war that demands response? Another council member, a creature with 6 eyes and translucent skin, added its thoughts. The Zalthari claim your colony was established in contested space. While their response was excessive, it does not meet the threshold for Federation military intervention. We encourage both parties to seek diplomatic resolution. Kim looked around the chamber in disbelief. These were the great civilizations of the galaxy, the wise elder species who claimed to uphold justice and peace, yet when humanity needed them most, they hid behind bureaucratic rules and political convenience. The truth became painfully clear. The Federation would not help because they did not see humans as worth helping. They were too new, too primitive, too insignificant to matter. Then humanity will seek justice on our own, Kim said quietly. His voice had changed from pleading to something harder, something that made several council members shift uncomfortably. We came to you in good faith, believing in the Federation's principles. You have shown us that those principles only apply to those you deem worthy. We will remember this lesson. Kim turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the council members whispered among themselves. A few felt guilty. Most felt relieved that the uncomfortable situation was resolved. None of them understood what they had just unleashed. The Transformation Earth received Ambassador Kim's report with rage unlike anything in human history. For the first time since humanity had reached the stars, every nation, every culture, every group united with singular purpose. Ancient enemies became allies overnight. Resources were pooled. Borders became meaningless. The entire species focused on a single goal with terrifying intensity. Within the first week, Earth's economy transformed completely. Factories that produced consumer goods switched to military production. Universities redirected research toward weapons development. Entertainment industries created propaganda to maintain morale and unity. Every human above the age of 16 registered for military service. Those too young or too old contributed however they could, working in factories, growing food, maintaining infrastructure. The other human colonies followed Earth's lead. Mars, Europa Station, Titan Base, and dozens of smaller settlements all mobilized for total war. Civilian ships were converted to military purposes. Mining operations shifted focus to strategic materials. The entire human sphere of influence became a war machine operating at maximum efficiency. Dr. Elena Vasquez led the weapons development program. She was humanity's leading physicist, a woman who had spent her career trying to unlock the secrets of clean fusion energy. Now she turned her genius toward destruction. Her team worked 20-hour days, sleeping in their laboratories, driven by the faces of the dead from New Hope. They pulled up centuries of human military innovation, looking at every weapon humanity had ever conceived, from ancient swords to nuclear bombs to theoretical designs that had never been built. What they created terrified even themselves. Humans had something most galactic species had abandoned, a deep understanding of how to kill efficiently. Earth's violent history, the thousands of wars fought over millennia, had taught humanity lessons the peaceful galaxy had forgotten. Elena's team weaponized those lessons with cutting-edge technology. Admiral Marcus Webb took command of Earth's military forces. He was a career officer who had served in conflicts across Earth and the colonies. Webb had gray hair, hard eyes, and a reputation for tactical brilliance. He gathered his staff and presented them with a simple philosophy that would define humanity's war strategy. The Zalthari expect us to fight like the Federation species do, with honor and restraint and concern for civilian casualties. They expect battles fought in open space with clearly defined rules. We're not going to give them what they expect. We're going to fight like humans have always fought when facing extinction. We're going to fight dirty, brutal, and without mercy until our enemies break. The admirals and generals in the room understood immediately. This would not be a civilized war. This would be something the galaxy had not witnessed in thousands of years. This would be total war fought by a species that had perfected the art of warfare over countless generations. The first strike. 2 months after the New Hope massacre, humanity struck back. The Zalthari had expected a response eventually, but they anticipated desperate defensive actions, perhaps a few raids to save face before inevitable surrender. What they got instead shook them to their core. A Zalthari supply convoy of 20 ships traveled through what they considered safe space, deep within their own territory. These were cargo vessels protected by 5 military escorts, carrying food and equipment to forward bases. The convoy's sensors detected nothing unusual until it was too late. Human ships appeared from nowhere, emerging from behind asteroids where they had waited in complete silence for 3 days. These were not the clumsy vessels the Zalthari expected from a primitive species. These were predator craft, sleek and fast, equipped with weapons that defied galactic conventions. The human ships did not announce themselves. They did not offer terms. They simply attacked with coordinated precision that spoke of extensive training and tactical sophistication. The Zalthari escorts tried to respond, but they were outmaneuvered and overwhelmed within minutes. Then the human ships turned on the cargo vessels. What happened next horrified the few Zalthari who survived. The humans did not simply destroy the cargo ships. They boarded them. Zalthari crew members found themselves fighting human soldiers in close-quarters combat. It was like fighting demons. The humans moved with deadly efficiency, using weapons designed specifically for shipboard combat. They wore armor that deflected Zalthari plasma shots. They fought with a ferocity that seemed insane. Within an hour, all 20 ships were captured or destroyed. The humans took no prisoners. Every Zalthari crew member was killed. Then the human ships vanished back into the asteroid field, leaving behind wreckage and a single message broadcast on all Zalthari frequencies. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Force. You killed 700,000 of our people. We will kill 700,000 of yours. Then we will kill 700,000 more. We will continue until the Zalthari collective no longer exists or until you deliver War Master Thrakos to face justice. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. This is not war. This is extermination. We are coming. The galaxy watches in horror. The attack sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The Federation Council held an emergency session to discuss humanity's actions. Many representatives expressed outrage at human brutality. Others pointed out that the Zalthari had started this conflict with their own brutal attack. The council was divided, but one thing became clear. Humanity was not behaving like any species the galaxy had encountered in millennia. War Master Thrakos watched the recording of Webb's message repeatedly. He had expected humans to be like other species, emotional and irrational during crisis, but ultimately predictable. Instead, he was facing an enemy that planned carefully, struck without warning, and showed no interest in following galactic norms of warfare. For the first time in his long military career, Thrakos felt something he had not experienced before: uncertainty. The Zalthari military mobilized 300 warships, a massive force by any standard. They would crush this human uprising quickly and restore proper order. Thrakos personally commanded the fleet, determined to show these upstart primates their place. He issued orders to begin hunting human ships throughout Zalthari space. The hunt did not go as planned. Human vessels refused to engage in traditional fleet battles. They ambushed supply convoys. They sabotaged mining operations. They planted mines in trade routes. They attacked isolated outposts with overwhelming force, then vanished before reinforcements arrived. It was guerrilla warfare on an interstellar scale, and the Zalthari had no experience countering such tactics. Worse, the humans did not limit themselves to military targets. They struck at the Zalthari economy, destroying cargo ships carrying civilian goods. They attacked infrastructure, taking out communication relays and power stations. They spread fear throughout Zalthari space, making it clear that nowhere was safe. Dr. Elena Vasquez's weapons proved devastatingly effective. Her team had developed missiles that could navigate asteroid fields with perfect accuracy. They created mines that could distinguish between Zalthari and other ship signatures, activating only for enemy vessels. Most terrifying was a weapon they called the Reaper, a drone that could attach itself to larger ships, bore through their hull, and release swarms of smaller machines that killed crew members while leaving the ship intact for human capture. The Zalthari began taking casualties at an alarming rate. Not the quick deaths of honorable combat, but slow, terrifying deaths in ambushes and sabotage. Their warriors, bred and trained for traditional warfare, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any rules they understood. Ambassador Kim returned to the Federation Council 3 months after the war began. He looked different now, harder and colder. When he spoke, there was no pleading in his voice, only cold certainty. The Galactic Federation had an opportunity to prevent this war. You chose inaction. Now you will watch as humanity demonstrates what happens when a Death World species is pushed to the edge. We are not asking for your help. We are warning you not to interfere. This is between us and the Zalthari, and it will end only when justice is served. Council Prime Zeleth tried to respond, but Kim cut them off. Save your diplomatic words. Humanity is done being the grateful newcomer. We sought peace and were answered with genocide. We sought justice and were given bureaucracy. Now we will take what we are owed in blood. The galaxy should take note. We are not prey. We are not weak. We are human, and we are done asking permission to defend ourselves. Kim left the chamber for the second time. Behind him, the council members sat in stunned silence. Several species began quietly increasing their own military budgets. Others sent secret diplomatic messages to Earth, attempting to establish better relations. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity was not going to remain the harmless newcomer. They were becoming something else entirely, something dangerous. War Master Thrakos received casualty reports in his command center. In 3 months of fighting, the Zalthari had lost 68 ships and over 30,000 soldiers. Human losses were lighter, perhaps 15 ships and a few thousand fighters, but numbers did not tell the whole story. Zalthari morale was collapsing. Warriors who had been confident now looked over their shoulders constantly. Supply lines were disrupted. Colonies demanded protection that the military could not provide everywhere at once. Thrakos watched another recording, this one showing a human soldier in close combat with 3 Zalthari warriors. The human should have died quickly. Instead, the recording showed the human killing all 3 Zalthari before finally succumbing to wounds that would have stopped any other species immediately. The human fought until life left their body, taking enemies with them to the end. What are they? Thrakos whispered to himself. His aide, a younger warrior named Krell, answered quietly. They are from a Death World, War Master. Perhaps we forgot what that means. Thrakos looked at his aide sharply. Explain. Krell pulled up data on Earth. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, and they survived by becoming the ultimate predators themselves. Other species evolved on gentle worlds where cooperation was rewarded. Humans evolved in hell where only the strongest, smartest, and most ruthless survived. We attacked their colony thinking they would respond like civilized beings. Instead, they responded like what they truly are. Apex predators defending their territory. The War Master stared at the data, seeing humanity's history of warfare, their endless conflicts, their technological progress driven by military innovation. He had made a terrible mistake. They all had. The galaxy had looked at humans and seen primitives. They should have seen hunters. They should have seen warriors. They should have seen danger. Send a message to Earth, Thrakos said finally. Request a meeting to discuss terms. But it was already too late. Humanity was no longer interested in talking. They were interested in something else entirely, revenge. And the galaxy was about to learn just how thoroughly humans understood that concept. Admiral Webb received the Zalthari request for negotiation. He read it once, then deleted it without response. There would be time for talking later, after the Zalthari understood the price of attacking humanity. His fleet was already moving into position for the next phase of operations. Phase 1 had been disruption and terror. Phase 2 would be something far worse. Phase 2 would show the galaxy what total war truly meant. The stage was set. Humanity had awakened something within themselves, something primal and terrifying that had been sleeping during their brief time as galactic citizens. The peaceful Deathworlders had remembered what they truly were, and the galaxy was about to learn a lesson written in fire and blood. The galaxy learns to fear. The point of no return, 6 months into the war. The Zalthari collective was bleeding from 1,000 cuts. Their military was stretched thin, trying to protect supply lines that humans attacked with impunity. Their economy was faltering as trade ships refused to enter Zalthari space. Their warriors, once proud and confident, now jumped at shadows. But War Master Thrakos refused to admit defeat. He had one final plan, one decisive action that would break humanity's spirit and restore Zalthari dominance. He would strike at Earth itself. The plan was bold and desperate. Thrakos assembled a massive fleet of 400 warships, nearly every combat-capable vessel the Zalthari possessed. This armada would bypass human defenses through a series of calculated jumps, emerging directly in Earth's solar system. The attack would be swift and overwhelming. They would bombard military installations from orbit, cripple Earth's ability to wage war, and force humanity to accept peace on Zalthari terms. What Thrakos did not know was that humanity had been expecting exactly this move. Admiral Marcus Webb had spent months preparing for the moment when the Zalthari would attempt a desperate strike at humanity's homeworld. He had positioned forces accordingly, set traps carefully, and waited with the patience of a predator watching its prey walk into a snare. The Zalthari fleet made its final jump into Earth's solar system on a cold November morning. Thrakos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching Earth appear on his screens. The blue planet looked vulnerable and beautiful, hanging in the darkness like a jewel waiting to be claimed. His warriors stood at their stations, ready to deliver the killing blow that would end this war. Then the trap closed. The battle of Earth-human ships appeared from everywhere at once. They had been hiding behind the moon, inside asteroid clusters, and even in the rings of Saturn. Webb had assembled humanity's entire military force for this moment. Over 600 vessels ranging from massive battleships to small attack craft. The humans had numerical superiority, but more importantly, they had prepared the battlefield. The space around Earth was filled with weapons the Zalthari could not see. Thousands of mines floated in carefully calculated orbits. Hidden missile platforms waited in the debris of old satellites. Automated defense stations hung dormant until activated by human command codes. When Webb gave the signal, all of these weapons activated simultaneously. The Zalthari fleet found itself in a killing field. Mines detonated against their shields. Missiles streaked in from impossible angles. Energy weapons fired from positions the Zalthari sensors had marked as empty space. And through it all, human ships attacked with coordinated ferocity that spoke of endless training and absolute determination. Thrakos watched in horror as his fleet began to disintegrate. Ships exploded under concentrated fire. Others collided with mines that appeared from nowhere. His warriors fought bravely, but they were outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. The humans were not just defending their homeworld. They were executing a carefully planned massacre. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the battle from a command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Around her, technicians monitored hundreds of weapon systems. She had spent 6 months building this defensive network, turning Earth's orbital space into the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. Now her creations were performing exactly as designed, tearing through the Zalthari fleet with mechanical efficiency. But Elena felt no satisfaction, only a cold emptiness. She had become a master of death, creating weapons that killed with terrifying effectiveness. The young physicist who had dreamed of clean energy seemed like a different person from another lifetime. War had changed her, changed all of them. She wondered if they could ever go back to being the hopeful species that had joined the galactic community. Admiral Webb commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the battleship Vengeance. His voice was calm as he issued orders, directing ships with the precision of a chess master. He saw the battle not as chaos, but as a complex dance where every move had been rehearsed. The Zalthari were fighting desperately now, trying to break through to Earth or at least escape with some of their fleet intact. Webb would allow neither. All ships execute formation Delta 7, Webb ordered. Tighten the noose. Nothing gets through. Nothing escapes. The human fleet moved as one, closing around the Zalthari like a fist. Ships that tried to flee found their escape routes blocked. Those that tried to press forward toward Earth ran into concentrated fire that shredded their shields and hull plating. The battle became a slaughter, and the humans showed no mercy. Thrakos realized he was going to die. His fleet was broken, his warriors were dying, and there was no escape. He had led 400 ships into this trap. Perhaps 50 would survive, and those only if the humans chose to let them go. The great war master who had terrorized dozens of species now faced his own extermination at the hands of primitives he had dismissed as weak. A communication came through on an emergency channel. Admiral Webb's face appeared on every screen in the Zalthari fleet. He looked tired, but his eyes were merciless. When he spoke, his words were broadcast not just to the Zalthari, but to every species in the galaxy that was monitoring this battle. War Master Thrakos, you came to Earth thinking we were weak. You believed we would break under pressure. You were wrong. This is what happens when you attack a Death World species. This is what happens when you murder our families. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we do not lose. Webb paused, letting his words sink in. Around Earth, the battle continued as human ships systematically destroyed what remained of the Zalthari fleet. I am giving you one chance, War Master. Surrender now. Order your surviving ships to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded. Do this, and your warriors will be treated as prisoners of war. Refuse, and we will destroy every single ship. You have 60 seconds to decide. Thrakos looked around his bridge at his remaining officers. They were warriors bred for combat and honor. Surrender went against everything they believed in, but Thrakos had led them into this disaster. He would not lead them into pointless death. With shaking hands, he gave the order to surrender. The prisoners, the Zalthari survivors numbering just over 40,000 warriors, were transferred to human custody. They expected torture or execution. What they received instead was something that disturbed them more deeply than violence would have. They received civilization. The humans built prison facilities on Mars, structures designed to hold the Zalthari securely but humanely. The prisoners received food, medical care, and living spaces that met their biological needs. They were not abused or mistreated. Human guards maintained professional distance, following strict protocols about prisoner treatment. It was all disturbingly proper, but the psychological warfare was subtle and constant. The Zalthari were allowed to watch news broadcasts, showing how thoroughly their empire was collapsing. They saw reports of human fleets moving through Zalthari space unopposed. They watched as their homeworlds fell under human control one by one. They witnessed interviews with Zalthari civilians who welcomed human occupation because it meant an end to the military government that had led them into this catastrophic war. War Master Thrakos sat in his cell, watched by human guards who treated him with cold courtesy. He had been the supreme military commander of a proud warrior species. Now he was a prisoner, kept alive not out of mercy but as a symbol of humanity's victory. The humans had broken his fleet, conquered his empire, and done it all while maintaining the moral high ground by treating prisoners well. It was a humiliation more complete than death would have. Ben Ambassador David Kim visited the prison facilities 1 month after the Battle of Earth. He walked through the corridors observing Zalthari warriors who had once believed themselves superior to humans. Now they sat defeated, their empire in ruins, their future uncertain. Kim felt no satisfaction, only a deep weariness. He stopped at Thrakos' cell. The War Master looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much. Why? Thrakos asked simply. Why treat us this way? Why not just execute us and be done with it? Kim was quiet for a moment before answering. Because we are not you. You attacked us believing we were primitive and savage. If we acted like savages now, we would prove you right. Instead, we will show the galaxy that humans can be both ruthless in war and civilized in victory. We will show that our strength comes not from cruelty but from our principles. Your principles, Thrakos said bitterly. They did not stop you from destroying my people. No, Kim agreed. They did not. When you killed 700,000 of our civilians, you crossed a line. We responded with overwhelming force because that is what survival demanded. But now the war is over. Now we can afford to be merciful because you no longer pose a threat. Thrakos looked away. The galaxy will never accept you. They fear you now. You have broken every rule of civilized warfare. Kim smiled without humor. The galaxy had a chance to enforce those rules when you attacked New Hope. They chose not to. They taught us that in the end only strength matters. We learned that lesson well. The galaxy will accept us because they have no choice. We are the new power and they will adapt to that reality. The new order. The war officially ended 9 months after it began. The Zalthari collective surrendered unconditionally. Their military was disbanded. Their government was restructured under human oversight. Their conquered territories were granted independence. The proud warrior empire that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years ceased to exist, replaced by a protectorate administered by human peacekeepers. The cost had been staggering. Humanity lost over 1 million people, including the original casualties from New Hope and the soldiers who died in combat. The Zalthari lost over 5 million warriors and countless civilians affected by economic collapse. Entire star systems had been devastated by the fighting. The war had been brutal beyond anything the modern galaxy had witnessed, but humanity had won completely and decisively. More importantly, they had sent a message that every species in the galaxy received loud and clear. Humans were not to be trifled with. The gentle newcomers who had seemed so harmless were actually apex predators who had been holding back. They had shown what they were truly capable of when threatened, and the galaxy would never forget. The Galactic Federation held an emergency session to discuss humanity's actions and the future of galactic relations. The debate was heated and fearful. Some species called for sanctions against humanity. Others argued that humans had acted in legitimate self-defense. Still others pointed out that humanity now controlled enough military force to ignore the Federation entirely if they chose. Council Prime Zelith found themselves in an impossible position. The Federation had failed to protect humanity when they needed help. Now humanity had protected themselves so effectively that they no longer needed the Federation. Worse, other species were taking note. If the Federation could not or would not defend its members, what purpose did it serve? Ambassador Kim addressed the council for the third and final time. He looked different now, older and harder than the diplomat who had first pleaded for help. When he spoke, there was no anger in his voice, only cold certainty. The Galactic Federation had an opportunity to prove its principles meant something. You failed that test. Humanity will not withdraw from the Federation, but neither will we ever again trust it to protect our interests. From this day forward, humanity will maintain whatever military force we deem necessary for our security. We will defend our allies with the same determination we defended ourselves. We will not ask permission to protect our people. And we will not tolerate any species that threatens human civilians. These are not requests. These are statements of fact. The council chamber was silent. Several representatives wanted to object, but the words died in their throats. What could they say? Humanity had proven they meant what they said. More importantly, humanity now had the military power to enforce their will. Kim continued. However, we are not conquerors. We do not seek empire. We want peace, but we will have peace on our terms. Any species that treats us with respect will find us generous and cooperative. Any species that threatens us will learn the same lesson the Zalthari learned. Choose wisely. He departed the chamber, and this time several council members stood as he passed, showing respect they had not shown before. Fear and respect were often the same thing in galactic politics. Humanity had earned both. The aftermath. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in her laboratory looking at the weapons designs that covered her screens. She had been offered every honor humanity could bestow, medals and recognition for her contributions to the war effort. She had declined them all. The weapons she had created had killed hundreds of thousands. They had been necessary for survival, but that did not make her proud of them. A message appeared on her screen from Admiral Webb. He wanted to meet with her to discuss converting her weapons research toward peaceful purposes. Elena felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. Perhaps they could return to being the species that dreamed of exploration and discovery. Perhaps the war had not changed them permanently. But she knew the truth. Humanity had crossed a threshold. They had shown the galaxy their teeth, and they could never again pretend to be harmless. The peaceful age was over. In its place was a new era where humanity would be respected, feared, and never again dismissed as insignificant. Admiral Webb, retired from active military service 6 months after the war ended, he had become a living legend, the man who had defeated the Zalthari and secured humanity's place among the stars. But he felt no triumph, only exhaustion. The young officer who had joined the military to explore space had become a warrior who understood the true cost of survival. In his final address to the Human Defense Force, Webb spoke words that would be remembered for generations. We won this war, but we paid a terrible price. We lost our innocence. We can never again be the hopeful species that first reached for the stars. But perhaps that innocence was a luxury we could not afford. The galaxy is not the peaceful place we imagined. It is dangerous and unforgiving. We have adapted to survive in it. Moving forward, we must remember why we fought. We fought to protect our families, our homes, our right to exist. We did not fight for conquest or glory. We fought for survival. As long as we remember that, as long as we use our strength to protect rather than oppress, we will remain true to what makes us human. The soldiers listened in silence. understanding the weight of his words. They had become warriors by necessity, but they had not become monsters. The line between the two was thin, and they would need to guard it carefully in the years ahead. The warning 5 years after the war ended, the galaxy had adapted to the new reality. Humanity was now a major power, their military second to none, their technology advancing rapidly, their influence growing across dozens of star systems. Other species had learned to treat humans with cautious respect. Trade flourished. Diplomatic relations improved. The wounds of war began to heal, but humanity had not forgotten the lessons learned in blood. Every human colony maintained strong defenses. The Human Defense Force remained at high readiness. Dr. Vasquez and her team continued developing new technologies, both peaceful and military. Humanity prepared for the possibility that someone else might test them the way the Zalthari had. A memorial was built on Earth, a massive structure listing the names of every human who died in the war. At its center stood a simple message carved in stone in every human language and translated into every galactic tongue. We sought peace and were given war. We asked for justice and received silence. We stood alone and survived. Remember the cost. Remember the fallen. Remember that humanity does not start wars, but we finish them. Ambassador Kim stood before the Yao Memorial on the 5th anniversary of New Hope's destruction. Around him gathered thousands of humans and aliens who had come to pay respects. He was older now, his hair white, his face lined with years of difficult decisions. But his eyes were still hard, still watchful, still remembering. A young Zalthari approached him hesitantly. This one had been a child during the war, part of a new generation growing up in the reformed Zalthari society. Ambassador Kim, the young alien said nervously, I wanted to apologize for what my people did. We were wrong. We were arrogant. We paid for that mistake. Kim looked at the young Zalthari for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. Your generation did not commit those crimes. You are not responsible for your ancestors' mistakes. But you are responsible for making sure they never happen again. Remember what happened when your people attacked humanity. Remember the cost of underestimating a death world species. Teach your children this lesson so that the galaxy never again makes this mistake. The young Zalthari bowed deeply. We will remember. The entire galaxy remembers. And it was true. The war had changed everything. Humanity was no longer the curious newcomer or the harmless observer. They were the species that had taken on a warrior empire and crushed it utterly. They were the Deathworlders who had proven that survival of the fittest applied to galactic politics as much as to evolution. The new galaxy and the Federation Council chambers. A debate raged about new defensive protocols. Humanity's war had exposed how unprepared the galaxy was for serious conflict. Species that had relied on diplomacy for millennia were suddenly investing in military technology. Some blamed humanity for disrupting galactic peace. Others thanked humanity for revealing dangerous weaknesses in Federation security. Council Prime Zeleth, now nearing the end of their term, addressed the Council with unusual directness. We cannot blame humanity for what happened. The Zalthari attacked them without provocation. The Federation failed to protect them. They protected themselves with the tools they had. If we find their methods brutal, perhaps we should ask ourselves why we abandoned those methods so completely that we forgot how to defend against them. The Council was silent. Zeleth continued. Humanity has reminded us of uncomfortable truths. Peace is not the natural state of the universe. It is something that must be defended. Civilization is not guaranteed. It must be protected. The strong do not always submit to the weak just because we ask nicely. Sometimes strength must be met with greater strength. Perhaps humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy is this reminder. We have become soft, complacent, believing our ancient treaties and diplomatic traditions would protect us from all threats. Humanity showed us what happens when those protections fail. They showed us what survival looks like when civilization breaks down. We should learn from this rather than condemning them for teaching us. The Council debate continued, but the conclusion was inevitable. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. There was no going back to the comfortable illusions of perpetual peace. The new reality was more dangerous but perhaps more honest. Admiral Webb, now a civilian consultant, met with military leaders from a dozen different species. They came seeking advice on building effective defense forces. They asked questions about human tactics, human weapons, human strategies. Webb answered their questions honestly, helping them understand what humanity had learned through centuries of warfare. But he always ended these consultations with the same warning. Military strength is necessary, but it is not sufficient. What made humanity effective was not just our weapons, but our unity. When the Zalthari attacked, every human became a soldier or supporter. We had no internal divisions, no political games, no competing interests. We were one species with one goal. Can you say the same about your people? Most could not. That was humanity's true advantage, not superior technology or tactical brilliance, but the ability to unite completely when facing existential threat. It was a death world trait, born from countless generations of humans banding together against natural disasters, predators, diseases, and each other. When they turned that unity outward toward external enemies, they became unstoppable. Dr. Vasquez finally returned to her original passion, clean energy research. Her wartime weapons research was classified and locked away, to be used only if humanity faced another existential threat. She hoped those weapons would never be needed again, but she knew better than to count on hope. The galaxy was dangerous and humanity had to remain ready. She gave a lecture at a university, speaking to students from dozens of species about fusion reactor design. A young human student asked her about the war, about her role in creating the weapons that had killed so many. Vasquez was quiet for a moment before answering. I did what was necessary to protect our species. I do not regret my actions, but I do not celebrate them either. War is not glorious. It is not noble. It is brutal necessity. If my work helped ensure that we never have to fight such a war again, then it was worth the cost. The student seemed satisfied with that answer. Vasquez hoped it was true. She hoped her weapons had made humanity strong enough that no one would dare attack them again. She hoped the galaxy had learned its lesson, but she also knew that hope was not a strategy. Humanity had to remain vigilant, remain strong, remain ready. The final message 10 years after the war, humanity unveiled a monument on New Hope. The colony had been rebuilt, larger and more prosperous than before. 700,000 new colonists called it home, living and working where so many had died. The memorial stood at the center of the main city, a towering structure of steel and stone that could be seen from orbit. At the dedication ceremony, Ambassador Kim, now elderly but still sharp, spoke to the gathered crowd. His words were broadcast across the galaxy, a final statement about humanity's place among the stars. We built this memorial not to glorify war but to remember its cost. 700,000 people died here because we were perceived as weak. We responded with strength that shocked the galaxy. Some call us brutal, some call us savage, some fear us and let them. Fear is respect in another form. We do not seek to be feared, but neither will we be victims. We came to the stars seeking friendship and found indifference. We sought justice and found bureaucracy. We learned that in the end only the strong survive. So we became strong, but we did not become cruel. We did not become conquerors. We remained human. We fought to protect, not to oppress. We destroyed an empire and then helped rebuild it better than before. We showed mercy to defeated enemies. We maintained our principles even in the darkest moments. That is what makes us different. That is what makes us human. Kim paused, looking up at the memorial. To those who would threaten humanity in the future, remember what happened here. Remember what happens when you attack a death world species. Remember that humans do not start wars, but we finish them. Remember that we will defend our own with every resource at our disposal. Remember that underestimating us is a fatal mistake. And to humanity, remember why we fought. Remember that our strength exists to protect, not to threaten. Remember that we are explorers and builders, not conquerors. Remember that the galaxy is better when we work together than when we fight. But remember also that peace is not weakness, mercy is not surrender, and diplomacy is not the same as submission. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for the fallen. Across the galaxy, humans and aliens alike paused to remember the war that had changed everything. The war that had taken a hopeful species and forged them into something harder and stronger. The war that had taught the galaxy to fear the name of humanity. In the years that followed, no species ever again attacked human colonies. Trade flourished. Relations improved. Humanity became not just participants in galactic civilization but leaders of it. Their military strength ensured peace. Their economic power drove prosperity. Their technological innovation advanced every species. The Deathworlders had not just survived their trial by fire. They had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever challenges the future held. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not prey. They were not weak. They were not to be dismissed or underestimated. They were the species that had turned tragedy into triumph, weakness into strength, and fear into respect. They were human, and the galaxy would never forget what that meant. Somewhere in the depths of space, new civilizations were just beginning to explore the stars. They would learn about the Galactic Federation, about trade routes and diplomatic protocols, about the hundreds of species that called the galaxy home, and they would learn about humanity, the Deathworlders who had proven themselves through fire and blood. The legend would grow with each telling until humanity became both warning and inspiration. The species that could not be broken, the species that had made the entire galaxy tremble. And humanity, for their part, returned to the dreams that had first taken them to the stars. They explored new worlds. They built new colonies. They pursued knowledge and pushed the boundaries of what was possible. But they never forgot the lessons learned in war. They never let their guard down. They never again trusted that peace was guaranteed. They remained human, hopeful but vigilant, peaceful but prepared, merciful but ruthless when necessary. The Deathworlders had claimed their place among the stars, and they would defend it against any threat. The war was over. The legend had just begun.